Hey, gang. Welcome to day one of American Studies. Here, it is not just something at St. Anne's Belfield. It's not just English and history. In a little ways, I want to just take a couple minutes to introduce you to the discipline of American Studies as a little bit talk about what we're doing in preparation for us doing it, because the best thing to do is day one, do it. American Studies is not just English. It's not just the study of, say, books, poems, novels. In many ways, English, as you might know, as a discipline, is very uh, young. It really comes in industrial Victorian England as a way to kind of consolidate class differences. We can see who speaks correctly. In ways, if you think about why you might hate grammar and spelling tests, there might be some latent causes there. And literature, in many ways, is about the examination of the best that's ever been thought and known. In that way, we will absolutely be doing that, but the United States has a very particularly troubling way of dealing with this. Think about the Declaration of Independence. Many people think the greatest work of American literature, also its founding revolutionary document, and has many ways seeped into the constitutions and its governing documents. But at the same time, it's not just history either. In many ways, yes, history is the mother of all the humanities disciplines, and we'll be engaging in history there. But we're also going to be doing all sorts of different study. We'll be looking at law and politics. We'll be examining how film tells a certain story of history. We will understand that, like, from the perspective of African Americans or women, or certainly within queer culture, that American history has a very, very different story. We'll be looking at literature, culture, social trends, military history, politics, business. All of these different ways of knowing and disciplines are things that feed into American studies. In a lot of ways, it'll propel you forward when you go to college and you can major in anthropology or in economics. But it does give us a wide umbrella with which for you to do a wide range of things. That said, American studies also is something, this is where it's a discipline that has its own history. In many ways, American studies comes from wanting to articulate what's exceptional and new about America. That it's land, a government that started by revolutionary documents, and had bloodless revolutions and changes of power. Is there something not exceptional in that story? And so you think about things like the symbol of, say, John Wayne. And the cowboy itself, or we might think about what kind of history is encoded in, say, the imperiled woman on the railroad tracks. And I'll also say that it comes at a time as America is articulating itself as a global empire. And in a lot of ways, we might want to think about where we are in American studies now is something better. It's Jimmy Baldwin dancing, people. It's American studies without exception. And what he says is, what happens when we take off the mask and when we know our history? And in that way, Baldwin is speaking from what was a huge change within how we studied history. Interdisciplinarity, critical race studies, indigenous and gender critiques of history, all examine that the way history had been told had been viciously racist, and in the purposes often of an expansion of an American empire. And so Mary Helen Washington, in many ways, inspired the person's classes. What if the African American experience was the Central American experience? Coming to freedom, a regression from freedom, new articulations of it. I think everything about the summer has suggested that what we can start to look at is, what is the United States if it is unexceptional? What if it is like other violent settler colonial cultures that became industrial global empires? But then how does that studying our past affect our present and future? Is history just a series of facts or lived experiences? So we're going to look at this and how history registers with us, but also that history itself does a lot of political work. You live in Charlottesville, and those statues that were built 70 years after several people did an armed rebellion against their own government, and then we put them in the public space, is itself an argument of history that we are reckoning with now. So I look forward to it. It's going to be a great year, and welcome to American Studies. All aboard. See Gopher on the leader.